Okay, you're looking to get the gist of something complex fast. You're in the right place.
We've been digging into a YouTube transcript
Yeah.
from the Jasnowidzi Krzysztof Jackowski official channel.
Right, the video is called Oto Dowod Wizianaiwo. It was a live stream, apparently.
Yeah, live broadcast. And he shared some, well, some pretty interesting predictions and thoughts.
So our mission today, pull out the main claims, especially this big one about a major power outage, and try to figure out the thinking behind it.
Okay, so what really jumps out first is how this broadcast ties an older prediction to something that just happened.
An older one. From when?
He mentions forecasting something about 7 months back. It was apparently in a video called Komushi Statutarz Wijianayuo.
Okay.
Around the 47-minute, 20-second mark, give or take. And the prediction was about a significant power outage hitting a country and also its neighbors.
Right. Got it. So fast forward to now.
Exactly. He points to this recent power outage, the one affecting Spain, Portugal, and parts of France.
And he's saying this is what he predicted.
He suggested lines, yeah. He mentions viewers sending reports, videos even, suggesting it was, pretty widespread.
And his reaction, what was striking about that?
Well, he definitely seemed to feel it wasn't just some small local thing. He emphasized the scale, entire countries, a big chunk of France.
Okay.
And then draws that direct line back to his earlier forecast. He's basically saying, see, this is what I was talking about.
But then it gets more complex, right? He starts questioning the official story.
He does. He mentions explanations were given for the outage, but he calls them unbelievable.
Unbelievable. Why?
Specifically, he doubts the idea that temperature changes caused it. Especially, he argues, given Spain's climate around that time, he sort of implies it doesn't add up.
Huh. So if he doesn't buy the official reason...
Then he floats another possibility. Could this have been a test?
A test. Wow. Okay. A test for what?
He suggests maybe it was to watch how society reacts when the power goes out on a massive scale. He really emphasizes how much we rely on electricity now. For everything, basically. Communication, services, money.
It's true. The potential for chaos if it's out for long.
Yeah.
It's pretty concerning.
Absolutely. But, interestingly, he also points out that apparently there wasn't total panic during this specific event.
No total panic. So what does he make of that?
Well, that observation leads him to this idea of familiarization.
Familiarization. Getting us used to it, you mean?
That seems to be the angle. He suggests maybe this event, whatever caused it, is part of a process, like getting people accustomed to the possibility of these kinds of disruptions.
And does he connect that to anything else?
Yeah, he links it to what he sees as a lack of detailed explanations from, say, energy experts on TV.
Ah, so the lack of information is part of it.
He suggests it might be deliberate, maybe keeping people from understanding the full picture of what happened.
And he draws a parallel to
the pandemic lockdowns. He sort of reminds people how short-term measures gradually became longer, more involved.
implying a similar pattern here. Gradual acceptance of bigger disruptions.
That seems to be the implication, yes.
Yeah.
Which then ties into his next point about strategic vulnerability.
Okay, what about that?
He expresses, well, pretty strong disbelief that a major European country's power grid wouldn't have better backup systems.
Right, you'd expect redundancies for something so critical.
Exactly. He finds it hard to swallow that such a widespread, long-lasting outage could happen purely by accident without robust fail-safes kicking in.
So that fuels his suspicion that it wasn't just an accident?
It certainly reinforces it for him, yes. The perceived lack of resilience makes him question the cause.
And this is where it shifts, perhaps, to darker territory. The idea of control.
It does take a more serious turn. He starts talking about power outages potentially being used for social control.
How so?
His argument is, you cut the power, you cut the internet, you disrupt communication, financial transactions, everything grinds to a halt.
So it's not just about the lights being out. It hits the core infrastructure of modern life, including finance.
Precisely. And he connects this to our ability, or maybe inability, to organize or react collectively in the physical world anymore.
Because we're so reliant on digital communication.
That seems to be his point, that our dependence on electricity for organizing might have weakened other forms of collective action.
He even uses terms like pacify or enslave.
Yes, suggesting that cutting off power could be a way to control populations by essentially isolating them and stopping coordination. It's quite a stark claim.
Wow. Okay. And does he see more of this coming? Future predictions?
He does. He then talks about predicting another even larger scale power outage.
Larger than Spain, Portugal, and France.
Apparently, yes. He mentions a big country, maybe thinking size-wise like the US or China.
And any time frame on that.
Not a specific date, but he does claim that politicians, in some places anyway, will start telling people to prepare for potential power loss.
Really? He expects official warnings?
He suggests that narrative, that advice to prepare, will be circulating by July.
By July, okay. And this ties into an economic crisis.
Yes, that's the next major piece. He predicts a controlled, deep crisis.
Controlled, meaning deliberate.
That's the implication.
Yeah.
He describes it as targeting China and Asia, calling it a non-war hit.
A non-war hit designed to be severe.
Severe enough, he claims, to overwhelm China's production capacity. A major economic blow.
And how does that connect back to people like ordinary citizens?
He links it to an earlier prediction he apparently made about savings.
Savings, what about them?
The idea that people with savings might only get receipts, basically, IOUs, and won't be able to access their actual money for a long time.
Maybe even permanently.
He suggests that's a possibility, painting a picture of really severe financial lockdown or instability.
And politicians acknowledging this.
He predicts they will. They'll admit to a significant drop in living standards, and he even mentions an 8-year recovery period being discussed.
8 years. Wow. So the power outages and the economic crisis are deeply intertwined in his view.
Absolutely. Especially the vulnerability of our electronic financial systems if the power goes out comprehensively.
Okay, so power, economy. Were there other predictions mixed in?
A few others were mentioned, yeah. He briefly touched on a pandemic.
Another one.
He described it as real but artificial, causing many deaths, and happening during this crisis period he foresees.
Right. Anything else?
There's also a specific mention concerning a Mr. Braun.
Braun, what about him?
The prediction was that something very nasty, vile, was being prepared against him, time shortly before elections.
Okay. And one more.
A financial one again. A warning of a major stock market crash, but following a smaller one that he links to tariffs.
So, like a precursor crash, then a big one, a whole cascade of events.
Certainly a picture of cascading crises, yes.
And his overall feeling about the times we're in.
He gives a pretty blunt assessment. He states that, in his view, 2019 was the last relatively normal year.
And since 2020.
Abnormal. That's the word he uses. A definite sense that things fundamentally shifted.
Okay, so let's just quickly recap the core ideas from the source material.
We heard the speaker claiming this alignment between an old power outage prediction and the recent events in Spain, Portugal, and France.
Right, and his deep skepticism about the official explanations for that outage.
Then there's the theory that it could have been a test, or part of this familiarization process he talks about.
Tied into concerns about grid vulnerability and even the potential use of outages for social control.
And all of this potentially linked to a predicted major economic crisis, possibly targeting Asia, alongside other disruptive events like a pandemic or market crashes.
Now, just to be clear, we're relaying the claims made in this specific YouTube broadcast. We're exploring the narrative presented.
Exactly. It's about understanding the perspective offered in the source. It certainly highlights how interconnected things are perceived to be.
And encourages thinking about potential vulnerabilities, however unlikely they might seem.
Definitely makes you consider the ripple effects of major disruptions, regardless of cause, and how people might respond.
So, maybe a final thought to leave with you, prompted by the speaker's perspective. Beyond the obvious things like power grids and finance, what are some of the less obvious vulnerabilities in our highly interconnected world today?
So to chew on.
Indeed. Well, thanks for joining us for this deep dive.